Good morning. Let's talk about world building. Now, for so many of us, world building is this complex task. And I think we tend to get quite overwhelmed by it, by the thought of world building. I think it just tires so many of us out. So we never actually get to it, or we put off the process thinking it's going to be really tough and really difficult to do, and that we're never going to be good at it. I've had to learn to world build properly throughout my life because, I started writing when I was a kid, and then it just became a habit where I was I began to make my worlds a lot more complex and a lot more developed in terms of the characters, the world, the mountains, the flora, fauna, the landscape, the buildings or lack of buildings, and even as something as simple as like names of characters, the civilizations, and the living world all around them. So it can be done, but it just takes a bit of practice and a bit of, I think, deep focus as well. So first of all, in terms of where our ideas come from, have you ever stared at a blank page for several minutes and then it's gone into hours, and then before you know it, you spent quite a bit of time staring at the page, but nothing of value, in your opinion, has been written down? You haven't gotten a brilliant idea, you haven't gotten anything that will actually help your story process. And I totally get that. That has happened to all of us. Anyone who says they've never had to stare at a blank page, they've never just been overwhelmed by the enormity of it all, or by the scale of just writing those first few words as they begin to world build, they're lying. It's happened to all of us. So how do we go from the blank page to actually getting that initial spark of inspiration? And I believe the first initial bits of inspiration you get, they come from the most fleeting things. And that's why I say you have to be very observant of your environment. You have to be very, very, I would say relaxed. You have to be able to let those thoughts just come in, no matter how silly or how ridiculous you feel they may be. And you have to be able to leave any form of self-judgment or imposter syndrome. You have to be able to leave it aside and just focus on the moment, focus on the now, and just be in that moment. I've had initial sparks where I'll never forget being on the bus. This was in London. And a man came on the bus. He was very well dressed, very immaculate. He was an older gentleman, and he had on these lovely brown, very deep brown, but like an antique brown leather shoes, and they were wingtips as well. And that just stuck in my head. And that man I saw he became, without knowing, the inspiration for one of my characters in The Dwellers Beneath the Arches. And it wasn't his entire build or his dress sense, it was just those shoes. Those shoes marked the beginning of something very big, very bold, very different, and an entire character with his own story, his own world, his own influences, his own grievances as well, and his own motivations, most importantly. If any of you have read The Dwellers Beneath the Arches, you'll see that the man, one of the characters in The Dwellers, he's quite a character. He's very complex. Some people like him, some people hate him, but we can all agree he's a very complex character. And I got the inspiration from that on a rainy morning, on a packed bus in London, very disgruntled commute to work. And this man came on the bus, and I noticed his brown leather wingtips. And that was that. Okay, so in terms of building your world, you have to decide what sort of world you're looking at. Are you looking at a world in our world, or just our world where there's no magic, nothing? if you have magic in your world, that makes it even more fun and slightly more complex, with a lot more world building involved, in my opinion. Especially if you're writing a fantasy series, something around magic, or, dark fantasy, urban fantasy. Yeah. There's a lot more that goes into the world building, but it's a lot more fun, and it lets you exercise your brain a lot more. It lets you just delve in deep into your thoughts and your emotions and those childhood fantasies you had. It lets you explore all those fantasies you had and ideas you had as a child, and it lets you set your imagination free as well. So in terms of the living world, you have to think about the landscape. You're talking rivers, mountains, lakes, even something as tiny as a pond. It all matters, because these landscapes, when they're talking about a little hill at the edge of a forest, or a huge mountain that has a forest at its base, are you dealing with more forest type situations, jungles? Are you dealing with more wood-like situations? I tend to write more, but depending on where my characters are located, it changes very, very drastically. It tends to be more woods with the Dwellers Beneath the Archer series. There were more woods in the books. And then in the Heathens series I'm working on at the moment, there was more forest, a deep, ancient forests. And then in Abdicare, another book I wrote that I haven't sort of released yet, that was more forest as well. So very ancient forest, very dark forest, because this was dealing with a lot of magical elements in it. So the mountains, the rivers, the climate, is it hot, is it cold, is there a deep, deep winter that goes on forever, which tends to lead to very forlorn characters, very serious characters. For example, take Game of Thrones. Well, in the north, they're all in this continuous cold, dreary winter. Their clothing highlighted that, because it was always very dark colours, very moody colours, darks, greys, just mostly darks, different shades of black. I did not know there were so many different shades of black, but they managed to capture all that in Game of Thrones and managed to make it all look fascinating. And then as you move to the south, I believe in the series, I only watched a bit of it, not much. As you move to the south, it became more colourful and more flamboyant. So don't be fooled. The climate, whether it's hot, is it cold, is it a world with 4 seasons like our world? Our world has 4 seasons, our world has 2 seasons in some climates. I'm in a 2-season climate now. Or, do they have fire falling from the sky every 100 years because of a curse brought on by an ancient witch? I don't know. You have to decide, because those climates will decide, conflicts will decide the culture and so much more. So the climate is really important as well. And then you want to build an amazing magical system, and not something that is very trite and silly, where it's just a spell and then everything is solved. Or, they want to walk through a door that's locked, and then they just chant a spell, and then everything goes well, and they just walk through the door and everything's grand and it's so great. No. You want to make the magical systems as complex as possible. I believe, and I don't know how I can say this with a straight face, but I think because I've been writing for so long and I'm from a culture that's very, very spiritual as well, I believe that you cannot do magic without losing something. Everything you do has an effect. So there's always something that's left behind. Like, for example, in some of the really cooler stories and cooler series on television, when someone comes back from the dead, they come back, but it's always conditional. They either come back with conditions, and it's conditions that will devastate you, or they come back and they are not who they say they are. So in a lot of cultures, you cannot bring someone back from the dead, because that's very, very taboo. Even if the person does come back, they are never who they were in their previous life. That's very, very important. So it's those magical systems that will give you the consistency you desire and the rules around your world, and the fact that it's this magic that they're playing with, all this magical systems, this cool magic. It's not just cool, it's very complex, it can be very dark, it can be very deadly as well. And then you have to look at the societies and the cultures. You have to build these civilizations, the hierarchy in the culture. Who is the head of the house? Who is the head of the community, the tribe? What is their name? What is the pecking order? And just by having that culture, you also have the clashes and the conflicts that come with the culture, because it's someone trying to topple them, is someone trying to take their place, is someone younger who feels that they are from the old world or the old guard. Are they trying to stage a rebellion? This is all very important, because just establishing those nice cultures, the way they dress, the languages, the hierarchy in that culture is very, very important, because that is where you start to get the real juicy conflict. And then you can bring in all the spells. If you're writing a fantasy, you can bring in all the spells where they all try to outdo each other with spells and magic, and they all die or something, I don't know. And then you have to give the details. So you have to add more depth to the world you've built, right? You need to look back into their past. So although you've created all these cultures and magical systems and conflicts, you have to look into the past. What is their history? What happened in the past to get them to where they are today? How did that person who is currently in power, how did he gain power? How did she gain power? Was it through nefarious means? Did they have to kill? Was blood spilled? Because once blood has been spilled in the past to gain power, your seat is never quite comfortable, because you worry about the same thing happening to you. You need to look at the prophecies, the enigma, any ancient artifacts within that world that is very important to that world, or will guarantee the survival of that world, or will fulfill a prophecy. So these things are very important, because they create a sense of wonder and a sense of something very, very crucial to your world. And then I would say you have to be very careful with the language you use in your world. You have to be very, if you're writing in a very ancient world or a certain land from far away, they tend to speak in a certain way. So how you'd speak in if you're a New Yorker, or you're very fast speaking English dialect, be very careful. People would not speak that way. They tend to be quite stoic, and they speak carefully and eloquently, and they're very, very deliberate with their speech. They don't use words without thinking about them, because saying the wrong thing in these worlds can lead to enmity, or like you creating a lasting enemy. So they have to pick their words very carefully. So the language they use will be very, very important. So I want you to bear that in mind. When I first wrote The Dwellers Beneath the Arches, even though it was a very light fantasy based in London, a world beneath London, one of the characters I realized I made a very big mistake with. Because when I first wrote it, I wrote it when I was quite young. And he was from a very, very working class background. But I had him speaking like all the other characters who were from very wealthy backgrounds, because the class structure there was very important. It was supposed to highlight how different they were and highlight just, different nuances in the series. But I had him talking, and I'll never forget, there was an entire chapter, because as I got older and I went back to edit it, I realized there was no way he would speak this way. No way at all. So I went back to edit it, but I missed an entire chapter where I think the edits didn't go through. So when I sent it to my editor, she said, his language is very fine at the start and the end and the middle, but there's this chapter here where something's gone wrong with his speech. Like, he's speaking too properly, and that's going to be a problem, because it's going to kick the reader out. And I went back and I realized I hadn't edited it properly, and I did. So the language, because even the editors will pick up on the language the characters use. And, you have to make sure that slang has its place, because slang cannot be used throughout a story, and you have to be very careful with things like fashion, and because most people want to be in these worlds, especially worlds with magical systems, especially if you're talking about a hierarchy. They want to be respected, because in these worlds, they always want to climb up the ranks. It's always about power and dominance over others. So to do something like this, you have to be fairly organized. Now, when I write, I have different tools I use to write. I use Scrivener and I use Microsoft Word. I don't use anything more complex than that. And I'm fine with that. I've been using it for a few years now. And because I have so many books now and they're just in this order, I'm so happy with what I use. I don't use anything too complex. When I want to record on the go, I don't do voice dictation anymore, because when I do voice dictation, I tend to dictate a bit too much and it just gets out of hand. So what I do is I do voice to text, where I speak and it actually types it out for me, so I can actually see, I can actually copy and paste later on. So just figure out your way of your world and make sure you have chapters or maybe a notebook where everything is listed down, because what you need to do is you need to be sure about the magical systems, you need to be sure about the world, the culture, any geography that's important, the climate. You need to be sure about, for example, if there's a name for a spell. You need to make sure that if you're writing an entire series or building this whole world, you need to make sure you remember the name for the spell. Readers will not accept you just swapping a new name in. No, they will bring you up on it, because a lot of readers are quite voracious, and they will bring you up on it. So go forth. I think world building is fun, it's fascinating, it's time consuming, but that's the beauty of it. It's so much fun, and it just really lets you reach deep into your imagination, open all these doors and all these vaults that you thought were locked. Lets you know what you're really thinking, what your characters are really thinking, what your imagination is really like, and just how imaginative you actually are. So go forth and world build. I'll see you in the next video.